Stacy. I'm the registered dietitian with Kinema Fitness. For this month of May, we are going to talk all about protein and make a protein-packed recipe. So protein is essential for our body, not only for muscle repair and growth, but also for our skin, hair, nails, and then also for our blood cells and also different transporter mechanisms in our body to help all the different metabolic processes that we need to breathe and exercise and live our everyday activities happen. So protein gets talked about a lot in social media and different fitness communities. And so there's a big emphasis on it, and for a valid reason. Protein is necessary for us, especially if you're exercising. We always want to recover with protein and a carbohydrate. You may be shocked to find that protein before exercise isn't necessary. It actually can cause some gastric complications because protein stays in our stomach for a longer period of time. So if you eat a high protein meal 30 minutes or an hour before exercise, you might have some GI upset, and you might actually notice that your performance slows down a little bit because of result of the GI upset. So we really want to focus on protein post exercise. I always tell athletes or clients that are working out, make sure you're getting your protein and carbohydrate within an hour of exercise, really trying to aim for that 30-minute post-exercise. If you're thinking about consuming protein and carbs 30 minutes post-exercise, then you'll find that you're really utilizing the best refueling time possible. So today's recipe is going to focus on a tuna salad with a little bit of a protein boost while also focusing on healthy fats rather than saturated fats. So today's recipe, it's going to be with tuna, but just know that you can always do this with a chicken salad recipe as well. Up to you with your preference. If you don't like tuna and you prefer chicken, you can do the same things just with the chicken instead. I just personally don't like chicken, so we're gonna do tuna for me. With the chicken salad, if you want to do that at home, you can always easily make it by, or you can easily shred your chicken by putting it in a standing mixer if you have one available, and that can easily shred the chicken without you having to manually do it with a fork. So that's just a quick little tip for you. So what's going to give this recipe a little bit more of a protein punch is we're going to use cottage cheese instead of mayonnaise. Again, not only does that increase the protein content of the recipe, but it also helps reduce the amount of saturated fat because we're replacing the mayonnaise, which is high in saturated fat, with cottage cheese. If this seems a little too big of a leap for you to try the cottage cheese with it, there's also other ways that you can reduce the amount of saturated fat of a tuna salad recipe. You can always use different mayonnaise that have other oils in them. So there's, sometimes mayonnaise with avocado oil or olive oil. So those are monounsaturated fats. So those are the healthy fats that we want. So you can try those products, or you can do half of those mayonnaise and then half the cottage cheese if you want to trial it, but you're a little nervous to jump right in. Another option, and more so with the chicken salad than the tuna salad, but another option could be mixing in hummus instead and using that as your emulsifying agent. So there's a lot of different options of what you can do, but today we're going to do the cottage cheese version. So with that, we're going to get started. I'm going to portion out about a half a cup of cottage cheese and put it into a blender. And I'm going to do a little bit more cottage cheese than we're actually going to use with a can of tuna, because I'm just going to make a few more batches of this minus the one can, and then with the portions too, it's all to your taste. So if you like a more dry tuna salad or chicken salad, then you can use a little bit less. If you like it a little bit more wet, then you can add more of the emulsifying agent. So it's completely up to you. Well, with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I have my cottage cheese right here. I'm using the Good Culture cottage cheese. I like this brand because they have probiotics in it. So if you're not sure what probiotics are, those are the live and active bacteria that's found in certain dairy products like yogurt. And so this cottage cheese brand actually adds it in. And so with that, it's helpful for our gut microbiome. So this is a probiotic. You might have heard a term called prebiotics. And so that is going to be anything with fiber, because that's almost like the food for the probiotics. So that good gut bacteria needs high fiber foods to survive and to actively reproduce in the gut microbiome. So pairing high fiber foods when you're eating something like a probiotic can be very helpful. So I'm gonna take this and measure out half a cup and then add it to my blender. Again, depending on how much tuna you're using, that might change, and depending on your preferences, but we're just gonna start with half a cup. I'm gonna pack it in. Okay, that's half a cup. And then I'm gonna get ready to blend this. Depending on the blender you're using and the different settings that are available to you, that might change the outcome a little bit. And also depending on the type of cottage cheese that you're using and the consistency of the scoop that you got, that might change outcomes too. But I used my NutriBullet, and so I wasn't able to put a pulse setting on, but I just kind of pulsed through to blend it. And because of the scoop that I got was closer to the top of the cottage cheese and it wasn't super well mixed, it wasn't very liquidy, so I did have to add a little bit of water, but you eventually want to get it to a good consistency where it is nice and smooth, so there's not a lot of the cottage cheese lumps. So I am just going to go ahead and add this to my big bowl. Or actually, I'm going to save it for right now and we will add it to the bowl at the end. So we're gonna go through and first add the tuna. So we're gonna go ahead and add the tuna, and I'm just going to rinse it really quickly before putting it in the bowl, and then we'll cut up all the veggies for it. Okay, so I added my tuna to the bowl. I just got an albacore tuna, and I had made sure that it was in water, and as a bonus, it was with no salt added, so reducing a little bit of sodium. So this is in our bowl, so now we get to start chopping up our veggies. I'm gonna start with some celery. I'm just gonna slightly and finely chop them up so that we get a little bit of crunch in our salad. And then from there, I'm gonna chop up our English cucumber. I chose the English cucumber just because there's less seeds in that, so it makes a better cohesive salad. I'm also gonna end up dicing a red onion, and then we'll add in some dill. And for my last little surprise, I'm gonna add in some pickles. I'm gonna finally chop up some pickles. I purchased the pickle chips just because they're a little bit easier to chop, and so with them I'm gonna probably cut them either into quarters or in sixths, depending on how big each of the pickle chips are. So I want them to still be a decent size, so you still get the crunch value and they don't get too soggy, but I also want them to be a little bit more finely chopped so it gets to mix and be a part of the salad. So I'm just cutting up 2 celery pieces into these little rainbows, just dropping them into the bowl afterwards. We talked a little bit in the beginning of the video about protein being important, and it is vital for our recovery post-workout, but also in any time of illness or injury. So when our body is working to repair itself, whether it be skin or whether it be after being sick, making sure we get a good amount of protein is going to be important. It also is going to help us with our mind and our focus and our clarity. So our brain is a muscle, so we always want to remember that and keep that in mind. Our brain's primary fuel source certainly is carbohydrates, but we also want to make sure we're getting adequate protein to help with our brain function. And with all the conversation about protein, there seems to be a lot of addition of protein into the market with all different products that are protein this, protein that. In a way, it's beneficial that there's more of an emphasis and discussion on protein, because there are certain individuals that maybe are not meeting their protein needs. For instance, those that maybe are following a plant-based diet, maybe they just are having a harder time meeting their protein needs, but it certainly is still a way to get enough protein in. For instance, beans and legumes are great sources of protein that don't require any animal products whatsoever. So to recap that, you definitely can still get adequate protein from plant-based sources, but those populations are definitely more at risk for not getting enough protein. But we're also aware that nearly half of Americans either meet or exceed their protein needs. So some of these high protein products may not be as necessary as we might think that they are, or they're being advertised for. So with that, I always like to encourage individuals to choose foods for your protein sources. So like we're doing here with tuna and cottage cheese, you're getting protein from actual food sources rather than some of those products that fortify it with protein. Like there's a protein popcorn brand that's out right now. I have not had the opportunity yet to taste it, but if it tastes good, that's one thing. But if it doesn't taste as good as the actual popcorn, then maybe just think about next time you're having a popcorn, let's add maybe some protein on the side of it. So I finished chopping up my celery. I added about half in with the can of tuna that I have, just because that looks like a good ratio of tuna to cucumber or to celery. Of course, with all of this, you want to use your own judgment and what works best for you. If you want it more tuna heavy, then maybe you do a little bit less celery than that. If you want it more vegetable heavy and just a little essence of tuna, then maybe you do both of those stalks of celery. I'm gonna cut up my cucumber. I'm gonna do about a quarter to start and see what that looks like. And I'm gonna cut the cucumber into quarters. So I'm just cutting it in half, then cutting that half in half, and then just cutting them into small pieces like this. They get added in. We're getting closer and closer to having our tuna salad. So what I love about making a tuna salad or chicken salad is that it's so versatile with what you can do with it. So you can use it as a sandwich mixing. So you can have 2 pieces of bread or a pita and stuff the tuna salad in there. Another option could be in a flat wrap, so like a tortilla or some sort of flatbread wrap, and roll it up, have it that way. You can have it just as is with a fork and eat it all up. Sometimes I like to dip vegetables into it, so maybe have like carrot sticks on the side and dipping it into that. Red bell peppers or bell peppers of any color really also serve as a good vehicle for the dip. And then you can also use, tortilla chips as a vehicle to use it as a dip too. So lots of options available, which makes this a great choice to make, and it's pretty easy to make as well, so it's a nice one to have on hand. And then last thing we're gonna mix in before we do our dill, we're gonna add in the pickles. So with the pickles, you just wanna make sure you pat them dry. So I'm just gonna place all the pickles on a paper towel. Here's about 5 of them to start, and then I'll do the rest afterwards. But to demonstrate, I'm just going to flatten them on and then put the top of the paper towel on and just get some of the moisture out. And that will help prevent the tuna salad from getting soggy. And so depending on the size of the pickled chips, I'm gonna either cut them into quarters or into sixes. So you can use your judgment based off of that and what works best for you. But I want them to still serve a purpose with having a crunch without getting lost in there, but then also want to make sure that they're small enough so it really becomes cohesive. Last thing to do is just add some dill. So I'm just going to take some dill and then finally chop it up and then add it to the mixing bowl. Just small pieces just to enhance some of the dill flavor from the pickles. Okay, we'll add it all in. And then now I'm gonna go ahead and add the cottage cheese. So the blended cottage cheese, I'm gonna add like a scoop at a time. So I have about 2 scoops right here. I'm gonna mix it all in, see what the consistency looks like. Again, I add in quite a bit of vegetables, so it might need a little bit more. It also depends on your preference, if you like it a little bit more dry or if you like it a little bit more wet. I'm gonna add about 3 more scoops of the cottage cheese into this, see what it looks like. Okay. Right now, this is what my mixture looks like. Okay, and then the last thing I'm gonna do is chop up my red onion and put in a little bit of lemon juice, and then I'll reassess what the mixture looks like then. Add in a little bit of diced onion, and I just really did it for taste. So I didn't use a whole lot. I probably used about like not even like a 1/4 of an inch thick slice, and then diced that slice. I'm just adding in the juice of about half a lemon into the bowl and then mixing it all together. Take a look. Looks pretty cohesive to me, and it looks like it's our high protein, low fat tuna salad. Again, we used some vegetables for some fiber. We used our cottage cheese as our emulsifier. We chose a low fat cottage cheese, so it's lower in saturated fat, especially compared to the mayonnaise that we might use typically in a traditional tuna salad. And we also get some probiotics because of the Good Culture brand that we're using right here. And then we have our lemon and dill to taste, just to add a little bit more flavor. And you can use this any way you want to get some protein into your meal. I hope you have a great rest of your May, and I look forward to seeing you back here next month for some summer recipes.